I like this. Okay, we're going to talk about beauty. If you think about what the word beauty means, somebody raise your hand. And what do you say?
Oh my gosh.
Volunteers? What? You? Okay. I think of Beauty and the Beast. Belle and how beautiful she is. The Beast. No volunteers? For those of you who don't know, on the left side of my face, I was born with what they call a port wine stain birthmark. There's different types. There's a strawberry, or they call some a beauty mark. Okay. All right.
Elisabeth is too small.
All right. There you go. I need a tape. All right.
Just give her a microphone.
Just give her a microphone.
Yeah. All right. There we go. Okay. Or a beauty mark, which a beauty mark some of you may have, which is just like a few shades darker than your skin. But what I have is called a port wine, like I said, and it is made up of extra blood vessels in your body. They can be placed anywhere, but mine got to be on my face, which is a very obvious place. And if you did look, like it's back through my hairline and it's back through here a little bit, and I used to have some on my neck, but it was removed. But when I was born, it was naturally came with me. So the day that I came for my mom and dad and I, we knew it was going to be a little bit different. About 3 days after I was born, the doctor asked my mom and dad if they were sure they would like to take me home. And my mom's like, of course, why wouldn't we? And the doctor said, well, some people, when this has happened, have wanted to put their child in with adoption. And that from, just that moment, things were going to change. And it was going to have an impact on my life. So as the years came through, when I first remember was about first grade, I was out on the playground. And I was playing with my good friend at the time, and this kid ran up to me and said, what's wrong with you? Are you a two-faced son of a jackal? I'm like, what does that even mean? I had no idea. But I remember right after that, I went and I cried under a tree. My friend let me borrow his plaid jacket, I still remember, and I just cried the whole recess because until then I had never been made fun of that I remembered. And I just sat there and I was like, why are they doing this? Why are they doing it? And why are people judging me, even in first grade, on what I look like? And I remember going home and I told my mom, and she was like, "Oh, be okay, honey. Oh, be okay." But that wasn't good enough for me. Like, why? Why are people being mean? So little. And so just from that one moment, I remember if I'm going to go through this and this is going to be part of my life, I was going to have to be strong. So that day, 20 years ago now, I still remember it. And the impact. And then, in I think 3rd grade, 5th grade, even to today, people will still say, what is that on your face? What is that on your face? When we went to Broadway at the beach, a lady said, oh my gosh, you must have fell asleep on your right side. Your face is just burned. It looks awful. And that was a month ago? Yeah, well, I just smiled and nodded. But to help over the years with that, though, because when I was younger, it was much darker, and like I said, I had it down through here and back through here a little bit, but I went to Duke University for laser treatment, and the point of it was to help lighten it. I don't know if you're a fan of Duke, and if you are, I don't hold it against you, but my theory is puke on Duke. I hate it.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. But I would go there from kindergarten all the way up to 6th grade. Every 6 weeks we'd go out. And what I did was laser treatment, and it's about The laser was about this big in width, and it was, ever been popped by a rubber band?
Yes.
Okay, so they would take the laser, and I did get numbing cream before. You put it on about 30, 40 minutes before. Big old white, yucky, it's disgusting. And I would go through the laser treatment. And what he'd do is he'd take the laser and he'd go through my face and down through my neck. And it'd take about 120 to about 140 dots. So you can get popped by a rubber band about that many times. It was painful. It was misery. I hated it. That's the best way I can describe it. And I would remember just crying and saying, "Why am I doing this, Mom? Why do I have to do this?" And I know she had good intentions, and that's what the doctor had said, because with time, sometimes they could swell, become larger, spread. And she's like, "We're trying to keep control over it." And I did my best to understand, but at that age, I was having such trouble. And I'd get so, it's like I was almost mad at God. Why me? On the doctor's bulletin board to the left, there was pictures of all his other patients. Everybody else had it in okay places, an arm, a leg. I know one, which is funny, you can laugh, had it back here, right above his crack. So, that was okay. Nobody could see that. But there was this girl, and I remember she was the only one I could relate to because she had it down right through here. So hers was in an obvious space. But he kept it on his bulletin board, and she was maybe about 2 years or so older than me. And he kept her on there because you could see the progress she was making. And she started off probably like mine, maybe a little bit more like swollen out, but not any big or anything. We had the same. And I resented her because hers went away. At the end, I remember thinking, why? But then I realized probably, I like to think maybe, she was more insecure about it and had to get rid of it. Like Charles was saying, it may have been the vein of the teacher speaking in Ecclesiastics. I don't know. I never met the girl, but I still remember that. I mean, she had blonde hair, blue eyes. She was, I think the first one, she's about 7. And you can tell that she stopped in about her teen years. She looked like she was about 18. So obviously she'd done the same thing I did and gone all the time. And I finally got to the point when I was probably in about 6th grade, starting middle school, in your adolescent years, that I was more worried what the people were going to think than what I thought. By then, you don't want to go into school with your dots on your face. And I mean, there would be times when it'd be so swollen from it that I would have a black eye, or that they would get so bad that they would blister. And I just told my mom I can't do it anymore. I mean, I would get ice packs. Where I grew up was western North Carolina and Raleigh, so it'd be about a 7-hour trip. And the doctor would give me ice packs on the way home for the laser to help the swelling go down. And there would be some times where my mom and dad and I would have to stop and get more ice packs because I'd ran out. And I just kept telling myself, okay, there's a reason I have to do this. Somewhere, some reason, I'm going to be strong and I can do it. But after a while, I was just thinking, no, this is not. Like, there would be points when I would go in the doctor's and he'd tell me, we'd talk, and he's like, "Do you know, you can breathe, Elisabeth?" And I didn't even realize I had stopped breathing. I was just like, okay. And he's like, "Stop, it's okay, you've got to breathe." And I'm like, oh, okay. Or my dad at the time, he was so nice. I was too small to sit in the chair by myself. So I'd have to sit in his lap, and I'd hold his hand, and I'd squeeze it, and he'd come out, and his hand was purple. I was like, oh my gosh, I cut off your blood supply because I squeezed it so tight, and you're like a 3rd grader, and you didn't even realize how much you could squeeze. And he never complained, never said a word. But then on the other hand, my mother, oh, great woman, great woman. I do promise. I'm sure some of you girls and guys can relate with your mothers. She'd be like, The whole time. I couldn't get her ever to calm down. Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Mother, breathe. It's okay. She'd make it so intense and so nerve-wracking at the doctors that people actually would come out and say, ma'am, do you need to see the doctor? And would get confused which one was there. And I knew that she had the good intentions, and I knew she was there to help me. But the stress on top of everything made it so much worse. And as the time grew and going to the doctors and doing all this stuff, I just told her I couldn't take it anymore. And I know her intentions were good, but like I said, with adolescent men, I've stopped wanting to go to the doctor. I've got to make sure that I'm trying to start fitting in instead of standing out, and making sure that my birthmark at the time had started going down, that I could finally use makeup. And the makeup. It was great. You discover it, and I realized I could put on what I call is Derma Blend. It's a special makeup, and I would be okay to go. And I found this new discovery. No more Duke trips, no more laser, no more anything. I could finally blend in. But it didn't always work. I would go out, and if I had maybe cried or if I had done something of getting in a pool or sweating, people would be like, what's that on your face? And I realized I could try to cover it up, and I could try to blend in and be that right person, but I never would. But the best part was I realized I didn't have to. I didn't want to. I wanted to be me. And that's who I am. I don't want to make the norm, like Charles has spoken with this whole lesson. There's not the norm. I mean, I don't know much of if you know the Addams family, but their theme is define normal. And if you know their family, they're totally not normal. But what is normal? Or what do you think of it? And I had to learn about middle school, which was a tough time, high school early, that there's not a normal. There's you, there's Stephanie, there's Halise, there's Avery, there's everybody. But there's not 100 Stephanies. There's an individual Stephanie. And that's who she's going to be. She's not going to try to fit into the mold of Stephanie, because she's her. And I learned at that age I was going to be me. And it was tough. I mean, my mom and I guess about 7th, 8th grade, started butting heads. She was like, well, you're going to go out like that? You're not going to wear makeup? No, I don't need to. What's the point? But then I realized, though, too, as I've gotten older, she was trying to protect me. The makeup would help me blend in enough that nobody would notice. And I could cover it up and do the in-style outfits and the shoes and the purses and all the accessories, and that was fine. But I couldn't do enough maybe with the makeup and the mascara and all the things like that, and curling the hair. And that she was just trying to help me. She wasn't trying to be mean. And at the time, though, I was taking it as she was trying to be mean. She was being vain. Well, why makeup? I hate it. But that's what she was trying to tell me, is I'm really there to help you so people won't go up to you in the middle of Broadway on our nights out and say, oh my gosh, you've got sunburns. Or one night I was out and somebody's like, you have sun poisonings, it's horrible. Just like, okay. And finally, when we were talking one night, my mom told me, she was like, if you want, you could say that you've got a horrible disease, and if you ask, it's spreadable. And I was like, ooh, I can? She's like, yeah, I won't tell anybody. She's like, you're just going to have to call them in the morning and say, well, actually, it's not. Because if they did wake up and check the mirror and realize they didn't have the horrible disease, that you'd lied to them, which I figured lying was worse. But I remember that in high school, and times when they would be so mean about it. And I know at that time, though, too, starting in about the 7th grade, Charles had mentioned, I had seizures, which now they're controlled, but I remember having to go through that as well. And oh my gosh, all the medicine, you got to take this, you got to do that. A friend invites me to go over to sleep over. Okay, sure, hang on. At 7:30, we got to stop so I can do my stuff. Well, we're going to be watching a movie. it's okay, I'll just sneak out and get it and come right back. And that was part of it. And friends that I still have a very good friend, and we laugh and say that we have to be best friends because we know too much not to be, and that we would use it against each other. So we've agreed. But I remember going to her house, and thank goodness her dad is a doctor, that sometimes if I didn't feel good, I'd have to go and talk to him, and he'd make sure that I was okay. And it was just a part of life that I had to know that it wouldn't be normal. And the worst part about it wasn't even me. I felt bad for the other people, which is kind of funny, but I was more worried about them than me. I was worried that we're never going to get to enjoy things. Like, they've always got to stay on their toes. They've got to be, okay, is she feeling all right? Because I know I'm a little out of place sometimes in what I say. But are they going to think, okay, is she having an episode? She's shaking. She's doing this. Is she about to have a seizure? Is she okay? I don't know. And it's always something they had to keep in the back of their mind. And at that time in high school, you're starting to drive. You're starting to get to go out places. You're going to do these things. And at that time, I wasn't. I was more like, well, I'll meet you there, because I didn't want to say that, my mom's still going to drive me over to the theater, or she's going to drive me to the basketball game. I was too embarrassed. But then I realized the one or two really good friends that I had would be kind and come and pick me up and take me, and they would take care of me, that I didn't have to worry. And to have those one or two really good friends was more meaningful than going out to the Friday night campfire party where there's going to be 200 people. Instead, the two of us would maybe go to the movies or do something calm, and even be maybe really losers, if in your idea, and go to bed at 10 o'clock. But I enjoyed that. I'd rather have those one or two really great friends that I still have relationships with now, as to be known at that wild party and seen on Monday and tell everybody at school. I even remember going to a basketball game our senior year. And at the time, I was with a friend, and I tapped him. I'm like, I'm not feeling good. I'm not feeling good. And doesn't know what to do, the poor friend, and starts running down the bleachers in front of the home basketball game. The stadium's filled. It's like fourth quarter, not quarter. Yes, fourth quarter. I knew that. Okay, and our team's winning, and everybody's up on their toes. Everything's going good, and we have to run out of the game the last 2 minutes, and he drives me home, and my mom and dad are there. They're helping me. We're all okay. But you know what I remember more is that he left, brought me home, made sure my parents were with me, and left to get back to the game to find out what happened. He wanted to know if we won or lost. And at that time, I was like, wow, you're supposed to be a really good friend, and you just bailed on me to go find out what happened at the basketball game, which I think we had one, but it wasn't that important, to me anyway, to a true friend. And the interesting part, though, was then we had the school Monday, and, was being all of a good friend and came and picked me up for school and didn't mind to walk into school with me and see what was going on, because as soon as I walked in, everybody's like, are you okay? Are you okay? Well, are you okay? Called me over the weekend, made sure I'm okay, just to tell the friends that they had talked to me about it and everything was okay. But the whole time, my mom and dad were the ones who were there to really help me out. Those few people that were there. And then I started realizing about that time, beauty's only skin deep. Of all these times, I realized that I was more worried about what the people were thinking. I was more worried of being accepted at the game, was more worried about getting to go to prom or getting to do all these things that all the normal people were doing and that I was fitting in, as to stopping and thinking, what is really going on with me? And people that really seem to truly take the time to care. And the most important, Why wasn't I asking God? Why was I more worried about the people? And it took me a while to realize that we could always work on our hair and our makeup and having the right outfits or blending in with the right things, but I had never asked the right person for the help. And it started to occur to me that I needed to change the way I was looking at things. And finally, I get to go to college, and college is great. But the best part about it was I met two lovely ladies. Yes, I'm going to say lovely ladies. And one now is a nurse and happily married and about to have their first little boy. And one is involved with her church and got her degree in divinity. And these wonderful ladies. I remember walking back from my dorm at the time where all the girls were going to pledge to join into the sororities because that was the cool thing to do in school. And I walked back and I ran into the two of them. And they're like, "Oh, we're so glad to see you. Do you want to come hang out with us?" And I was like, rather what I would do. And we stayed friends, became roommates, wonderful girls. But you know what? The best part about it is they left me for me. I didn't have to be embarrassed if I had an episode. I didn't have to be embarrassed if I didn't have on my makeup. And the best part was, one, like I said, became a nurse, and we were out walking one day. I was like, I don't feel so hot. Just like, all right, let's sit down. And I didn't feel well, and I knew like I was about to have what I call, as to a seizure, I call them episodes because I'm very blessed, mine are very mild. And like I laid down, things were good. She's like, all right, you feel better? Sure. All right, let's go have some lunch. Okay. I mean, it wasn't like I've got to go and tell everybody, I've got to go and let others know or anything. It's just she accepted me for me. And that's been, I don't know, 6 years ago, but I still remember where these little things may be to you. When you look back later, they have a huge impact. Whether it's with a friend or a family member or someone you don't think at the time may be important, they really do. I remember my friend and I going to church together at the time in college, and it was the first actual contemporary service I had ever been to. And just like tonight, we sang Amazing Grace, and I just fell down on my knees and started crying. And I couldn't help it, and I was like, why am I crying? This is so silly. And she put her hand on me, and she's like, it's okay, don't be ashamed. But for all those years, I felt ashamed. Like, why did I have to be the one? Why couldn't I be that girl at Duke who doesn't have her birthmark anymore? Why does it have to be me? And like I said, I realized it was all about me. And that wasn't the way that you should be looking at things. And it may have taken me 20-something years to realize it, but I did realize at that time that I should have been involved maybe in a great youth group or involved more somewhere else. And I was very blessed, and I did grow up with my parents going to church in a Lutheran traditional service, but I didn't have a place that I could call home or a place that I could turn to at church. And maybe for you, this might be your place that you could turn to. And you should really be glad that you do, because I know if I had had a place or somewhere that I felt stable that I could have turned to, it probably wouldn't have taken me so long to realize that I am me for me. If you read, I think, Charles's post today on Facebook, it was talking about God made you for a reason, that you have a job to fulfill. You may not know now, but you do. I still am not sure where or what I'm to do, but there's a reason for it. If you open your Bible to 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7. If you get it, I want you to mark it. We're going to take two places. 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7. It is our verse. Lindsay will know both. If you will mark it, and then John, that's one to mark. Samuel. Yeah. Yep. 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7. And the other one, John chapter 12, verse 43. Oh, that one too. The second one is John chapter 12, verse 43. Those are the two verses I want you to. Do we have them both? Do I have a volunteer for 1 Samuel?
Jameson.
Okay.
Joel, thank you for volunteering.
Yeah. If you're going to pick a friend, then you can do it.
Okay, well, I mean,
So we already learned this, remember?
Yeah, you should. This is a familiar verse.
So Joel, read it.
just 7.
Yes.
But the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart.
What does the Lord look at? What does man look at?
Outward appearance.
Okay, you can keep that marked. Then in John chapter 12, verse 43. What does it say? Someone?
For they loved human praise more than the praise of God.
What are they wanting more of? Praise from the human. This year, today, what I've learned, just like I said, I was so busy blending in and trying to match what people wanted. I'd forgotten where to really look. And if I had just looked here a little sooner, I would have probably saved myself a lot of why me, or I'm mad at you, or oh, they don't really love me because I'm not very pretty. I remember a very nice man telling me that I was beautiful, and I laughed. I was like, yeah, right, not me. And he looked at me again, and he told me he loved me and he thought I was beautiful. And I said, thank you. And on the inside, I was like, yeah, whatever, not me. And so finally, this nice man told me, you're beautiful. Now please repeat that. And I said, I am beautiful. And even to this day, I still have a little trouble when I look in the mirror and I want to look and say, oh, the left side of your face, if you look close enough, the doctor did really good right here because it's lighter. And if you look a little closer around my eye, it's not so good. And if you look right through here, it's a little darker here. And definitely my chin right in the center, if you notice, it's okay, got whiter, but definitely like right out here, it's definitely darker and it doesn't match. And oh, I could just go on and on and on. And, he never really got to get around my eye because the laser was too strong, and so if I did my eyelid, then it wouldn't work. And if you notice really good, then, my eyebrow here is blonde and this one's here is not. I mean, I've done it all. I could really criticize it. And you know what the funny part is? Just like if you were here last Sunday, Charles was speaking and he laughed. He's like, which side is it on? I forgot. So as much as I was spending all this time criticizing and making myself feel about this big because I was so worried about that outward appearance, people really don't care. What was more important was that I was listening in these 2 verses that I gave you, that God is not looking on your outward appearance, that He is looking for you. He made you the one you were. And there's a reason, just like in his Facebook message, he said, you have a job to fulfill, that I'm here to serve Him. And if you realize that, and you're truly able to accept that at any age, it's never too late. You'll get to be able to save yourself a lot of grief. And you'll realize where the beauty really lies. It's not on somebody saying, wow, you look really great today because this. And rather because I probably look very splotchy and horrible than know that I'm really being me. Instead of having to put on some kind of mask so that I look beautiful for everyone else. If you go into into Ephesians that we've been studying, if you go into the last one, it's chapter 9, verse 8 and 9, I believe. I said, I'm sorry, yes, Ecclesiastes. You're right, excuse me, in the Old Testament. Thank you for correcting me. You're very good, thank you. Mine says a little bit different. But in the verse it says, eat of this food and drink of this wine and wear your good smelling cologne. I'm not trying to tell you don't enjoy the nights that you do feel beautiful and you have that nice dress and that nice suit and you're about to go out somewhere special. That's not what I'm trying to tell you. It even speaks of it in the Bible to enjoy those nights or enjoy those special times. But don't worry about that so much that you don't see that you're beautiful for what you are. And don't go and feel that to be your best all the time you have to have the latest and the greatest and always doing everything right. I remember the first time my mom told me I was beautiful. I was about 20. I had on my nice new Easter dress. And I walked in there and we were about to go to the Easter service. And my mom said, oh, honey, you look beautiful. I stopped and dropped my mouth. I was like, what? She's like, oh, you look beautiful. I said, Mom, you have never told me that. She's like, oh, honey, of course I have. I know I have. I'm like, no, you haven't. And she's like, oh, whatever. But you don't know whether it's your first time, whether it's your 100th time you've heard somebody tell you that. It has a lot of meaning behind that word, beautiful. So when you think of beauty, or you think of these pretty, beautiful, gorgeous, any of those words, think about what they mean when somebody says it to you, or when you say it to somebody. Are you truly meaning it? Like when God may be saying that about you? Or are you just trying to say something to make somebody feel better? Just to kind of, oh my gosh, she has the latest dress and she just looks so gorgeous. Oh my gosh. Which I can do it really well. Like, I mean, and that's something I learned from all those years. I can put on a really good front. I mean, I'm very good at it. I can hide myself very well. And I can come through those doors and looking like the most confident person in the world. But I'm not. I mean, I think I could at least do it pretty well. I don't know, but I can hide it out. But what I want you to know is you can enjoy those nights and be beautiful. You can have great times But what is most important is what I was telling you, 1 Samuel and in John. God is not going to look at you the way the people do. And God is going to be much more important than any time a person will be. Underneath your seat, some of you have some mirrors. You're going to have to share them. But when you look in that mirror, I want you to think about share them, please. Sir, if you have to, share. When you look in that mirror, first, think, what do you see? What does man see? That's what you'll have to share. Think about, what does God see? Is what I want you to think about when you look in that mirror. Don't think about you. Don't think about people. When you truly take a moment and look at it, what are the things that God sees? You can share them with a friend. You can keep it quiet. It's up to you. But what does God see? And tell yourself that. Tonight, when you go home and you look in the mirror, what does God see? You can even write it up there if you want to on your mirror. What does God see? Because in the end, that's what matters. Thank you.
Yeah, Elizabeth.
Good job, Elizabeth.
I thought I was
No.
clapping, and I realized that.